Hello and welcome to this short course about how to support your child if they're being bullied. This is one of a series of courses commissioned by Resilient Rutland, which is a National Lottery funded programme. I'm Pooky and I'll be teaching you today. And please don't feel like you need to know anything ahead of doing this course. It's all designed to be really simple and practical, and hopefully it will give you a few ideas to take away. You might want to watch some of the modules with your child or the young person that you're concerned about. Don't feel like you need to do all of these things. Just listen in, think about which ones might work for you and use those, and maybe leave the others to one side. This isn't about telling you what to do exactly. It's more about giving you ideas of things that you might try if these feels like they could be something that you could have a go at. A question that I'm often asked is, at what point does something cross the line from being banter and teasing to bullying? Essentially, at what point does this become malicious? When should we, as parents or carers, become worried about our child? And at what point is it just kind of friendly play? Now, this is quite a tricky one to answer because we've all probably been in situations where somebody has said something in jest or playfully and we've taken it in quite a different way. Or maybe we've even been on the other side of that and we've said something and we've meant it as a joke and someone's found that it's landed really badly with them and it's not been taken in the way that it's been intended. So how do we pick apart those moments where things have just gone a little bit wrong, and then bullying? So when we think about the definition of bullying, then we're looking at behaviour which is hurtful, repetitive, intentional, and it involves an imbalance of power. Okay, so let's take that in turn. So first of all, hurtful. This is behaviour which hurts or harms, and this is about the perception of the person on the receiving end. So if someone says something or does something or behaves in a certain way that hurts me, then that is hurtful behaviour, regardless of the perception of everyone else. It's about how I feel, not how everyone else feels. Okay, so it's hurtful. It's repetitive. So taking that example of where you've said a comment and it's landed really not the way you wanted it to, but you wouldn't do it again. But bullying, this is happening again and again and again. So it's hurting and it's happening multiple times. Okay, so hurtful, repetitive, intentional. The person knows that they're going to hurt. So again, that comment you made that landed really badly, you didn't mean to hurt anyone. It wasn't your intention. When it's bullying, it's intended to hurt. Those words, those actions, that behaviour is intended to hurt the victim. So it's hurtful. It's repetitive, it's happening multiple times, and it's intentional. They're intending for it to hurt. And it also involves an imbalance of power. So this might be where there are multiple people, or someone feels like they're kind of the bully, the boss in this scenario, and someone else feels very much that victim kind of role. So it could be sort of superior and inferior kind of balance of power here. And often we will find that bullying can be where there's a group of people and they'll bring other people alongside to agree with that point of view, and then someone else who feels unable to respond. Other scenarios that we might see this might be, for example, in a workplace. So it might be if a boss makes comments which are received less well by a more junior colleague, that imbalance of power can really play here, and those comments in the other direction might not land in quite the same hurtful, intentional way. So bullying then, it's hurtful, it's repetitive, it's intentional, and it involves that imbalance of power. So if you're not sure if what you're seeing is bullying or if it's kind of banter or teasing, then actually get to be a bit curious and explore it with your child. Actually maybe show them this video and explore it together and have a think about what is going on here. So think about, is this hurtful? Particularly, does it play to insecurities that your child might have? In particular, we'll find often that bullies will pick on stuff which is something where a child's self-esteem is already quite low in that area. So if they're worried about their weight, or perhaps they are worried about being small, or maybe they don't do so well in class, if another child is picking up on that, knowing that your child is insecure about this and they're niggling away at that, then that is intentionally hurtful. Is it happening often? So we're looking for that repetition. And crucially here, has your child asked for this behaviour to stop and yet it continues? That's another really crucial sign, is when we say, hey, please don't talk to me like that. Please don't do those things. This really upsets me. And yet it continues. Then again, we'd think that's very much crossing the line into bullying. That's absolutely not okay. And then thinking about the balance of power here as well. So thinking about what these interactions look like. Is your child giving as well as getting, or is this very much that they're on the receiving end, very much seeming like the victim in this scenario? So beginning to understand that and unpick it a little bit is quite helpful. But we need to remember that if our child comes to us because they're distressed, because they feel that they're being picked upon or teased and they're unhappy and it's hurting, then we do need to stop and we do need to listen. But I guess that the crucial question here is whether we should be watching this course about bullying, or we do have another course which is about helping your child to navigate frenemies and bants and that kind of thing. And if you think that it's less deep, you don't think it's actually bullying, then the other course about frenemies and banter and so on might be more helpful to you. But you might just find watching both is a really good start. If your child opens up to you about the fact that they're being teased or bullied, it's a massive privilege. It's super hard for children to open up to the adults that they really care about this kind of thing. There's all sorts of different thoughts that will go through their head about it. And a first thing we need to do is just acknowledge, this must have been really, really hard for you. Thank you for trusting me, and reassure them that you're going to listen. So this is not at this point about you layering your emotions onto this. You will likely be pretty angry or otherwise distressed by what you hear. This is not about you. This is about your child having the opportunity to begin to explore their story in their words. Just give them space. Let them get it out. Try not to inject too much of your own emotion in the first instance. Allow them to tell it. It can be helpful to remind your child that you think that this is really brave. They probably don't feel really brave right now. They're very much feeling like the victim. So reminding them that having this conversation and bringing it to your attention and talking about it is really incredibly brave. And finally here, in this early listening part of the process, just listen with your whole self. Try not to lay your emotions on, as I said, but just listen openly. Ask questions, be curious about what's going on, and try to get as much detail and understanding of the situation as you can from your child. Have a think about how you can really show your child that they've got your whole attention right now, that this conversation matters more to you than anything else in the world right at this moment. One of the things it's really important to understand about bullying is that it massively erodes children's self-esteem, and it takes very little time to knock children down, but quite a lot more time to build them back up. So one of your key jobs as an important adult in their life is to offer constant reassurance. I'm here. I still love you. You're not who the bullies say that you are. We're going to get through this. Constant reassurance. Remembering too that bullies will often pick on the things that we already feel a bit insecure about. So if your child thinks they've got a wonky nose, that's the thing the bully will be picking on. And that little insecurity that they might have had gets bigger and bigger and bigger. If your child is a little bit worried that perhaps they're not so good in maths, that's the thing the bully will pick on, and they'll pick and they'll pick and they'll pick. And these insecurities get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need then to be thinking about how we build up our child's self-esteem and how to try and protect against this kind of evilness that's kind of coming in from the words and the actions of people who are trying to be unkind to them. It's really important to know that the balance has got to be very much in the favour of the self-esteem building if we're going to have an impact, because the bullying, you know, one incident of bullying and unkindness, it takes, I think the research says it takes like 7 or 8 positives to counteract that one negative, which might make you feel like giving up right away, but you're with your child a lot and you really care about them. So think about how you can complement them and build them up in really meaningful ways. Help to keep them connected with the things that they really value about themselves, help them to feel part of something at home, and if they've got stuff going on in other domains of their life where the bullying isn't happening, really lean into those things and make them a really big and important part of their life. Remember too that compliments and praise, particularly for a child who's struggling with feeling insecure in their self-esteem, it's not always going to be heard the first time, the second time, the third time, the 10th time. You've got to say it again and again and again and again and again. And if you can, providing tangible, concrete proof of your belief in the child or the things that you care about them can really help. Writing it down or creating some other kind of memento that they can go back to, something they can touch and hold and maybe read, can be super helpful. Your words might just blow away with the breeze, but something you've written down or recorded or texted to them is something they can look back at in moments when they need to. And also just remember that sometimes even when you think you're not being heard, maybe you are on some level. So just because you're not getting the response that you want, that your child doesn't go skipping off into the sunset when you pay them a compliment and you try to build them up, it doesn't mean that this isn't registering on some level. And then finally, I find here a helpful conversation that you might have with a child is actually, as counterintuitive as it might sound, stepping into the shoes of the bully, having a think about things from their point of view. A very helpful phrase I find here is hurt people, hurt people. So if we're hurting, sometimes what we do is we lash out and we try to hurt others. And sometimes we try to build ourselves up by breaking others down. And the reason why I think this can be helpful to explore with a child who is being bullied is to help them try and see things from the point of view of the bully and understand why this might be happening. Not because we're trying to say it's okay, it's never okay to bully, but when we begin to see things from the point of view of the bully, someone who might be hurting, someone who might themselves have been hurt by other people, when we begin to understand that, then just perhaps your child can begin to connect with the fact that this isn't about them. All those things that the bully says, it's nothing about them, and we need not to hear those words and respond to those behaviours, because this is very much about the bully and their problems rather than about your child and their insecurities. So just trying to see it from that point of view can sometimes help them to begin to understand this isn't about me and my crooked nose, or the fact I'm rubbish at maths, or that I'm short, or that I'm fat, or whatever the bully might be picking on. This is about the fact that they have got their own insecurities, worries, issues, troubles, and they're hurting, so they're lashing out. One thing that can really help when your child is being bullied is to think ahead to bullying type scenarios and role play some appropriate responses. So you can start by looking backwards and talk with your child about what happened last time, what did they say, what did you say, how were you standing, what happened next, how do you think the bully perceived that, and begin to explore with them, get curious about these interactions. What do you think the bully wants to happen in this situation? When they say X, what do you think they want you to do? What is the thing that you wish you would have said in that scenario if you'd have had all the clear thinking in the world? What we often find is that afterwards children think of the perfect response, but they just didn't have it at the time. So what we can do is we can look ahead to next time and we can say, okay, next time they say this, what are you going to do? Now, you'll have to help your child a bit here, because quite often they'll have watched loads of films or whatever and they'll think that some quick kind of smart aleck response will be the answer, and it rarely is actually. Often what a bully is looking for is some kind of big response, whether that is anger or tears or something, and that seems to really fuel them. And the most effective response can often just be none, like deadpan, am I bothered? Yeah? And if we can do that, if we can just kind of allow this to roll off us, allow not for the response that the bully is trying to provoke to happen, to try to remain in control with our body language, remembering that bullying is about that misbalance of power, how can your child look strong and confident even if they're quaking inside? Also, we need to talk to our children that, thumping someone probably isn't going to be the answer here either. And again, that's often something that they might fantasize about doing. So let's think about what's practical, what is an appropriate way to manage the situation, and what is not what the bully is expecting or wants. Let's put together some scripts. Let's practice saying those words, role play them together. The more times that a child has rehearsed saying something at times of relative calm, the more likely they are to be able to find those words and say those things and stand that way in those moments of more challenge. Think too with your child about what else they might be able to do in these challenging situations. Where and to whom can they go for safety if needed? What needs to happen next? Your child might be worried about the idea of you talking to the school about the bullying for fear that it might get worse. And it's really important, if you can, to bring them along with you on the journey of working alongside the school. It's very unlikely, if the bullying is happening in school, that it will get better unless you get the school involved. Every school will want to know if bullying is happening, and every school should have a clear and clearly communicated behaviour policy, and perhaps even a bullying policy as well. But bullying may come within the behaviour policy. But it should be quite clear from a school's website or policies who you would approach with these kinds of concerns, and your child might have already a good idea about who would be good to approach within the school. Now, a few things to remember here. Things are not going to change overnight just because we tell the school. It's really important that you and your child are appropriately prepared and know that this won't be a really quick fix. It's going to take a while. The next thing is that you need to go to the school prepared to work together. So we're not going to accuse them. We're going to go to them with facts and tell them exactly what has been happening, with whom, for how long, and the facts of the scenarios. So we're going to try and go with a list of facts rather than emotion and accusations and distress. We might feel all those things, but it's not going to make change happen. Your job as the parent or carer or interested adult here is to be a little bit patient, but also very persistent, to try to make sure that things do change, that people are following up as they say they will, and to work alongside the school to support your child. Schools are often very, very, very good at providing the support needed here, but we must remember that not only do they need to support our child in this scenario, they need to support the other children who are involved too, and that does include the bully, who's likely to need significant input from the adults at school too. Remember, hurt people hurt people. There's not usually the fact that bullying just comes out of nowhere. There's normally significant work for the school to do to support both parties here in order to enable a resolution to happen. However, right from the first moment that you begin to make the school aware of this situation, you need to make a plan with the school, or they need to make a plan with you and your child about how to make sure that your child is safe, so that your child knows exactly who they can talk to as these situations arise, that they know exactly where they can go and whom and where they can seek safety if needed. As the situation progresses and time passes, do keep on talking to your child about what's going on for them. Hopefully things will begin to improve, but don't let your support drop away too soon. Particularly if your child's self-esteem has been really significantly eroded by the bullying, it can take a really long time for them to build their confidence back up and for them to feel really like things are going well for them again. Sometimes if we drop away too soon, then our children feel like they need to put on a brave face and let us think everything is okay, and they might not want to worry worry us if things like the teasing and the bullying recommence again. Make sure your child knows that you're never going to judge them if they're worried or they're scared or the situation changes. Make sure they know that that door is open, and just keep that constant dialogue open, honest conversations, so that they know that you're there and you'll listen without judgment anytime they might need that to happen. As well as checking in with your child about the bullying and the situation frequently, it's also really important that you take time completely away from this worry as well. Remember the other things about your child. Lean into the other parts of their life that they're really enjoying right now. Have fun together, laugh together, connect. Take time away from the worry. That really matters. Otherwise, the bullying and this scenario takes this huge precedence in their whole life, and it becomes what everything is about, and that feels very hard indeed. So we need to shrink the size of the bullying in their life by making the other things feel bigger. Lean into the stuff that sparks a little bit of joy. Finally, whilst you must keep checking in with your child, keeping those conversations going and that open and honest communication there, you also need to just notice in yourself, in your own reactions, if you're being overprotective as they begin to move forward in life. It's so upsetting, so distressing as a parent or a carer when our child has experienced bullying, but we need to give them space and permission to live their lives as things begin to move on as well. It's going to be really important each time they encounter a new scenario or they face other challenges that we respond quickly and supportively, and that they know they can ask us for help when needed. However, what we can sometimes do is go too mama bear on them because we've seen challenge in the past, and we need to give them space to fly. So just be a little bit aware of that in yourself. It's a really common response when a child has faced any kind of difficulty, that we become just a little bit too overbearing, too overprotective. What that can do is it means that sometimes they don't want to keep having those open, honest conversations because they don't want to worry you, and then sometimes this stuff goes back underground. So try to step back a tiny bit with regular check-ins and support from the side. I hope there were some ideas in here that you found helpful. I hope it got the conversation started between you and your child. It's really important to understand things from the point of view of your child here. It's incredibly difficult when we feel that we're being bullied, and sometimes it can feel like it's never ever going to end and there's nothing else in our life at all. Our job as parents, as carers, as adults is to help our child to find a way forwards, to support them with the steps that are needed here, and also to help them to connect with the other bits of their life that are going okay. We can offer perspective here. Finally, as the parent or carer, remember that you matter too, and that actually this is a really stressful thing to manage. So if you need help from someone, if you need listening from someone, if you need someone to whom you can have a good cry or a rant, that is okay, and I would actively encourage it. Look after yourself, exercise good self-care, so that you can in turn look after your child, because they really need you right now. Good luck.
Hello, I'm Lyra, and I'm going to talk to you about bullying and how it can affect people and how you can make a difference. Bullying is when a person or group set out to hurt, scare or humiliate someone. It matters to me because I've seen friends and myself be bullied, and it makes life really hard. I did some research to help find 4 ways to spot and stop bullying. I made these into a poster. This leads me nicely onto my next point. I'm going to talk to you about these 4 points one at a time. Number 1 is don't ignore bullying when you see it. This matters because if you ignore it, then it only makes matters worse. Number 2 is to be an example of someone who stands up to bullying. This is important because you can be a role model so that then more people will stand up to bullying. Number 3 is to let the person or people who are doing the bullying know that their behaviour is not okay. you should do this because then it might help them put their bad behaviour right. Number 4 is to get an adult so that then they can help stop the bullying. You can help stop bullying by doing these 4 things yourself and spreading it with other people so that they can do it too. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this helpful, and don't forget to remember to be kind.